Hi everyone, welcome this Sunday evening to Chai Chat and Community. Today we hear from the Victorian Electoral Commission, the VEC, and today we'll be talking about elections, job opportunities for elections, and today I'm very excited to have a guest alongside me, Harsimran, and we'll be going into a little all about today. But before we kick off, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Krushnadevsinh or Kano Ravalji. I work at the Victorian Electoral Commission in the multicultural team. And so my job is to look after multicultural voters and make sure that they are included. Because I know I'm an immigrant myself. मैं इंडिया से आया था जब मैं 7 साल का था, and I didn't know much about living here. My parents didn't know about the election system, so I'm very passionate about working in elections and making sure our communities, especially, have a say. Even if you're a migrant, if you're a PR who you can't vote, I think it's still very important to know because maybe in the future you might become a citizen, or it's even also good to know because there's also lots of job opportunities around the election. So Harsimran, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Kano. So my name is Harsimran, and I work with the VC as a democracy ambassador. The role of the democracy ambassador is to promote and educate people around voting, especially around the correct ways to vote, the basic political structure in Australia. And I was born in Chandigarh, India, and I moved to Australia while I was working in the software technology and information technology industry. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
And I might ask you a question. How did you get involved with the democracy ambassador role? Could you tell us how you got involved with the VC? Was it something that you were looking for, or did it just come your way, or?
I would say it's both. How I got into VEC is, through a channel of volunteering. I volunteer a lot with the local council. I volunteer with the Punjabi community a lot, and through volunteering, I got into opportunities that came my way. And I think last year and starting this year, we had this Leadership Victoria program with the VEC. I got into the same and then learned about democracy, and then being on path to citizenship now. I think it was. The timing just really worked for me, and I really wanted to get this information across the community to be able to exercise their citizenship duties very effectively. So I think this is a perfect fit for me as well.
Perfect. And it's so good to see that क्योंकि a lot of us volunteer करते हैं, we do work in community, we go to centers and we help out, we donate, and we all do a lot of this for our community, whether that's Punjabi, Gujarati, or Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi. We're all part of we're part of all the community, and we always give back. We go to temples, we go to festivals, and one opportunity leads to another. And it's so good to see that more people from multicultural backgrounds, especially refugees, migrants, are getting into these positions, and so we can make sure that we can help out our community. And so, bit of background: me and Harsimran, we both speak Hindi, but we'll do in and out. We'll predominantly speak English. But if you have any questions in Hindi, anything like that, you can ask us in the chat as well. Or if you want to email us or anything, you can do that in Hindi as well. But before we kick off today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are zooming in, or we're coming in live from today, and pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And because this was originally Aboriginal land, we always pay our respects because now we're lucky as migrants, as refugees, to call this place home. But it's also important that this is also home for the Indigenous people of this country. So Harsim, would you like to tell us a little bit about the VEC and what it stands for and what we do?
Yes, so the VEC stands, it's an acronym for Victorian Electoral Commission. And VEC, first of all, is an impartial organization. It is not affiliated with any political party or candidates. So what does the VEC do is basically the VEC organizes the Victorian state and local council elections. And the VEC also looks after the electoral roll. The electoral roll is a database of all the Victorians who are enrolled to vote. And the VC also, in run up to the elections, promote and educate people around voting and the resources available for voting.
And I think that's a very good point you made around that we educate people around voting, because I know, coming from India, the voting in India is completely very different to what it is here. I think, Harsim, have you voted back in India?
Yes.
Could you tell us how it was like then? India में कैसा था वो voting?
Yes, I'll be a little honest there. We had this voter ID card which my parents got made for me, and then voting time, you'll always ask somebody, okay, whom to vote for. I didn't really know where to look up the information. It was only, word of mouth information that used to flow. And then maybe, coming from a city which was very developed and I didn't have much access issues or something, but obviously I didn't look up to, being able to vote, or it was a very different feeling there. And probably I would say, personally, I wasn't a very active citizen back then. So it's only, working with the community and at the ground level, I've really gotten into, being aware of the right to vote, being able to exercise it effectively. So that's something I've learned here
Yeah.
back in India. Maybe I was, voting, exercising my duty, but it wasn't that effective.
I think that's very inspiration that now that more on, I guess now voting means more to you, and that now you look at it as a good, something, not, oh, just I just have to vote big just because,
Yeah.
but you look as a good right. And I think voting, obviously you do have to be citizen. I know if you're listening, you might not be citizen, but there's also other ways of getting involved in democracy. Australia is a democracy, and luckily we live in a country where you won't get in trouble for voting for someone wrong. You won't get taken away. Luckily, we're very, very safe. And sometimes come from countries where that is a bit difficult. It's hard to trust the government. It's hard to trust the voting process. But there's people like me, Harsimran, there's many other people that work in the commission to make sure that elections are fair, that we
Yeah.
don't, there's nothing that goes on. And we want to make sure that what you have to say, or maybe in the future, when you become a citizen, you say is included. And the cool thing is that you don't actually have to be a citizen to work for the election, which I think is a very good thing, especially for the Victorian election. You don't have to be a citizen. So if you have a working visa, whether you're a PR or as long as you have a working visa of some kind, you can work for the elections. And some of the job opportunities are what Harsimran is doing as a democracy ambassador. There's also other job opportunities to work on the election day. So job election hota hai, we need lots of people to work on the day. I think you employ thousands of people, and so you can work on the day, help out people how to vote, and do that. And that you can have that for 2 weeks. When the election is over as well, we need people to count the votes because everything is counted by hand. And so if you're wanting to be apply for job opportunities, we might talk about it a little bit more. But if you have any questions about job opportunities or anything like that, feel free to let us know. But I'll post the link to apply for jobs in the chat as well. And the cool thing is, I think when we did this a few weeks back, some people have watched the video and they apply for a job opportunity. So there's always job opportunities, and we always need people. We might kick off into Hersimran. I might do what election it is. Would you like to tell us what election's coming up?
Why don't you tell us what election this is, Kanu, and what does it decide?
Yeah, so in Australia, we have 3 levels of government. So we have level 1, which is federal, which covers whole of Australia. Big election, which we had a few months back. Dusra election has state, which for us is just Victoria. Last living Victoria is just Victoria. We have Queensland election, New South Wales election, all different elections. This year that we're talking about is Victorian election. And level 3 is your local or municipality elections. So for us, I live in Werribee, so it will be Wyndham Council for me. But there's still all the different councils. But this one that we have coming up is level 2, which is just for Victoria. And it impacts everyone living in Victoria. And so things around hospitals, education, public transport, Victoria Police, all those things that affect you will be decided in this election. And the thing is, even if you're a citizen, I know you can vote only if you're a citizen, but even if you're not a citizen and you're like, oh, I want better public transport, or I want someone in Victoria to advocate more for my rights or my community's rights. If there's someone like that who's standing up, you can go and support them as well. You might not be able to vote, but you can hand out flyers. There's other ways of getting involved in democracy as well. I would love to know when the election's coming up.
Yes, definitely. I think so. The big date for this election, the Victorian election, is 26th of November 2022. That is when the elections are. But then there is another date you really want to be, informed about, is 8th of November 2022. So you need to be enrolled to be able to vote in this election. And the enrollment for this election closes at 8 p.m. on 8th of November 2022. Which brings me to my next important point is, who can enroll to vote in Australia. So any Australian citizen who is 18 years of age and above and who is correctly enrolled to vote can vote in this election. So correctly is important here. So By correctly, I mean is when you enroll with the VEC, your name and address needs to be up to date. It needs to be current and correct with us. So if even if you've previously voted in Australia and you're enrolled with VEC and but you've changed your name and address, you need to update that with VEC to be able to vote in this election. So correct enrollment avoids hassle, in voting this year.
Mm,
Yeah.
perfect.
And you would tell us about the types of enrollments that are available.
Yeah, so the most that common across everything is a general enrollment, and you don't get scared that you forget to fill in the form. The good thing is when you become a citizen, they'll give you a form to fill in at the ceremony. So don't feel like you'll forget or you need to figure it out. Once you become a citizen, if you're not yet, you'll get a form saying how and to fill in it as well. But no, also if you're a citizen and you turn 18, you get a letter at home saying to enroll, and that is pretty much I think what Hersimon was saying. You need like a voter ID. That's what enrollment is saying, that you're on the enrollment and we know that you can vote and you're qualified to vote. And so that's a general elector. Then if you have any issues, there's also a silent elector, so your name won't be shown on the roll if you would like that. Also, for example, I know a few of us might be moving around houses or you don't have a fixed address, whether that's for whatever reason, you can also sign up via that. So our job is to make sure if you're a citizen, if you're over 18, we want you to enroll and vote. So no matter what you're going through, we are there to support you. And we want to make it as easy as possible for you to vote. And so I might ask you, Hersimran, we've talked a lot about voting. Why is voting important? And Salah has just asked a question, and you might be able to answer this, is if you're enrolled in previous elections, do you have to enroll?
Yes, so I think so to answer this question, we don't have to re-enroll. We just have to verify that our enrollment is up to date. So we go to the VC website, check your enrollment, and you'll be good with it if all of the details are correct.
Hmm.
Yes, so there's no re-enrollment.
Perfect. Yeah. Unless if you move your house or anything, you just have to let us know. That's the big one. People, we change our banking, we change this, but we always forget the voting. So whenever you move house, you have to let us know that you've moved house, like you do with Centrelink, like you do with anything else. You have to let us know as well. And that's, you just go online and let us, and you can fill in details.
Sure. And coming back to your question, Kanu, so why is voting important for me or anybody? So I think there are a lot of things I could say, but I would say, Australia is a democracy and it's your right to vote. But more than a right, I think it's your responsibility because, it makes you responsible to select the representatives who would be representing you in the Parliament of Victoria. And it makes you a part of the decision making democratic process wherein, you decide who are the people who are going to make the laws and policies for you, and these laws and policies affect all of us. So it's a duty, I think, which you want to exercise very carefully and informatively. And also coming back to what you were pointing out, Kanu, in the previous conversation about people who are not citizens yet, but if you're on the path of citizenship, I think this is a good time to get accustomed to how the political system in Australia works and how the voting process works, so that you're comfortable when you do become a citizen, you know what to do. So I think that's for the PR, the citizens, non-citizens who are on PR and looking for the citizenship in future as well. So it's good to know for them as well.
Hmm. And again, I think Salah will post a link in the chat. But one of the best ways to get involved is by signing up to work for us. Again, as long as you have a work visa, you can come work for us. There's absolutely nothing holding you back. There's plenty of opportunities at the moment. As we all know, there's lots of job opportunities, and one of them is with the VEC, and there's really good opportunities present. And so I think I heard someone covered. Oh, yep. You're going to add something?
Yes, I did cover, but I was going to ask, do we want to go into, how to vote correctly? Do we want to start that, so that people know how are we going to vote?
Yeah, I can go into how to vote, and I think it's in Australia voting can be a bit difficult because you have to use numbers. Yeah, we don't use machines like in other countries. We don't press a button. When we use numbers and we use pen and paper. So when you go to an election center on the 26th of November, you'll get two pieces of paper like this. Again, these are just examples. These are not reals. So don't feel like they'll be like this, but they'll look like this, bit more bigger. You'll get a thing. You get one ballot paper. This is the lower house one. So in Australia, we have two houses. We have the lower house and the upper house. And it can be a very complex system, but the way it works is both houses We decide people to sit there, whether that's you like them or they're from a community or whatever the reason is. We vote for them and we put them in power. And once they're in power, they get to make choices for us. So, for example, if I put someone, person for me to represent me, they'll be in election. They'll be in the parliament in Canberra, where they'll be making decisions, or they'll be in parliament in Victoria making decisions for me. And so, all those people, potential people, will be here. Again, this is just an example. They'll be on a piece of paper like this or like this. And how to vote correctly? There's two ways to vote. There's a couple of ways to vote in the state election. One is you can vote on the date. As Harsimran said, the election's on the 26th of November. So you can go on the day and vote. And on the day, it's available at churches, schools, at all local centres. You can vote anywhere. It's very easy to find. You won't miss it. And the other way is, for example, I know a lot of us could be citizens. A lot of us could be flying overseas. You might be going to traveling. So I think Sal has said, ask a question. Can you vote early? Yes, you can. You can vote 2 weeks in advance. So I think the date is the 14th. You can start voting. So you can go in there and you can go to vote as well. And the other way is you can postal vote. For whatever reason, you can't get to a centre. If you let us know when you're filling in the online form, you can let us know that I would like a postal vote. And so you'll get both of these at home. And you can fill them in and send it to us. So that also counts. And all your votes will be counted, whether you vote early, which is 2 weeks in advance, which for you don't have to do anything. You just walk in, you vote. You don't have to let us know that you're coming in early. We give you 2 weeks an opportunity to vote. And that's pretty much it. And so I think we just got a question from Danielle. If I sign up to work for VEC during the state election, can I work in my local area or will I be allocated to a specific area? So that's a great question. So if you sign up to vote, if you sign up to work for us, if you're working at a center, you 99% of the time you'll be working in your local area. So I work at 3 different elections before, and every single time it's been next to my house. Because one, I live in the area, so I know people, and also, for example, I speak Hindi, I speak Gujarati, so I know people in my community that can get help. So a very good question, Danielle. If you sign up to work, you'll be 99% of the time you'll be working in your local area. So it's very easy to get to in the mornings. You don't have to travel far. But I think that's a great question. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat again. But we might go to you, Harsimran. So we've talked about voting. I would love to know how we vote in the lower house, which is this ballot paper.
Yes, sure, Kano. So this the ballot paper that Kano is showing on screen is for the lower house or the greenhouse, as we say, and it's called the Legislative Assembly. So the first and foremost thing is in Australia we use numbers. We don't tick, cross, or color the boxes, or we don't even draw in the boxes. And yes, that does happen on the ballot papers sometimes. Yeah. So on this ballot paper, you have the list of candidates who are standing for election in your area. And what we do is we write 1 against the candidate whom we would most want to win, and then we number every other box in sequence or order. Sequence or order until every box is numbered. So you need to number every box for your vote to be counted. You don't use numbers twice as well. So for example, if this ballot paper had three candidates, you would write 1 against the candidate who you would most want to win.
So for example, could I, let's say if I want A to win, do I give them number 1? Do I just write number? Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, continue, sorry.
Yes. So I was just giving an example. If this ballot paper had only 3 people listed, so you write 1 against the person whom you would most want to win, 2 against the person whom you would next most want to win, and 3 against the person whom you would last want to win. So you number every box and in sequence, not using any number twice.
Is that correct?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yeah.
Perfect. So again, number 1 was for the most favorite, and number 8 was for, let's say this has 8 people, would be for your least favorite.
Yes.
Perfect. And so once this is exactly correct, you have to use numbers. And once you're done with this, you would fold it up, and there's a box there, and you just put it in the box, and then you're done for the lower house. And that's voting number 1. There's 2 ways to vote. And Harrison pretty much correct. Ticked everything off. You can't tick, you can't cross. You just use numbers. Like that. And then the second house is this
bigger one, Kanu would. Yeah.
And I think Danielle's just asked another question: is what happens if you make a mistake on the paper. I think, Harrison, would you like to tell us what happens if you make a mistake? Let's say on this one, you write a wrong number, or let's say you write the number 5 twice. What happens?
I think there isn't a need to worry, Daniel. So on the voting day, there would be election staff on at the election centers. You can always ask for help. If you're not comfortable, writing off the number, they would provide you a new ballot paper. So it's that easy. You just go to the VC staff; they'll provide you a new ballot paper.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, nothing happens. You won't get in trouble. And the good thing is, it doesn't have your name. As you can tell, I didn't put Kano or anything like this. It's completely private. I didn't write my name on it or anything. So when you vote, it's completely private. And so that's how it's done. And so that is the big ballot paper. I mean, the small ballot paper. And this is the second ballot paper. It's normally very, very big. As you can tell, I'm trying to fit in the camera. It's very, very big. And the way this is very tricky to listen. You have two options when you're voting in this in the Legislative Council. Option number 1, you see this black line? It might be a bit hard to tell. Oops, sorry. I'm trying to get. If you see this black line, if you can vote up the black line or down the black line, and there's two different ways to vote. So if you choose to vote above the line, up the line, you put number 1 next to the party you most want to win the election. So up here is different parties. So party A, party B, party C, D. All these are real parties, right? You might know some big parties. They'll be here. So if you want to just choose one party, you put number 1 next to the party you most want to win, and then you're done. That's it. You don't do anything else. You put number 1 and you're finished. You fold it up and you put it in the box. That's it. The second option is, again, if you were down the black line, below the black line, you have to put at least 5 numbers in order of your preference. So similar to what Harsimran was saying, on this ballot paper, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 being your most favorite person. On this ballot paper, you do exactly the same. You put minimum 5. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm done. I can put in the box. If I want to, I can number every single box. But minimum, you have to do 5. At least 5. Otherwise, your vote does not count. So you have to put 5 numbers down the black line. So again, 2 options. This black line, you can go up the black line and you put number 1 next to the party you most want to win. Fold it up and then you're done. The second option, or you're down the black line, this black line, and you put minimum 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you might be asking, why do we have 2 options? Well, the reason is because if you would like to vote for a party, you can just vote for one party and then you're finished. The second reason is if you wanted to make your vote count a bit more, you can vote for individual people. So when you vote down the black line, you can vote between different parties. So let's say this is party A. These are all the people in party A. Party B, all the people in party B. Party C, all the people. So if I wanted to, let's say I like party A. They have a really good public transport policy. But then their policy for public parks is not so good. It's not so good for education. And so I'm like, I really want to vote for party A, but they don't have a good policy for community centers. And so what I might do is, this person in party A will have a really good policy, really good rules for public transport. So I'll give them number 1. But this person in party B has really good policy for community centers and public parks. So I'll give them my second vote. And then third, fourth, 5. So when you vote down the line, you can vote for different people as well, across different parties. Whereas if you're above the line, you can vote 1. But the easiest thing is, if you're confused, you can vote for the party above, you fold it up and you're finished. But you have 2 options. You can only pick one, up or down. You can't do both. You can't do up and down. That's wrong. You can only pick one option, up or down, and then you're done. So that is the 2 ways to vote in the election. It can be a bit hard, but Harsim, would you like to add on how people can get help when they're voting? Because I know this can be a bit hard, as you can tell, to write all these numbers and to use pen and paper.
Yes. So there's a lot of help available on the voting day as well as in run up to the election. I think the first point I would like to make is getting yourself accustomed to the voting process. So the VEC website has a very good election guide, which you can look up to. The VEC website in itself is very accessible and very easy to follow. So I think it's a good thing to go to the website and getting yourself accustomed to the voting process, how to enroll to vote, how does your vote count and how to vote, looking up the state regions, your boundaries. I think so. That's the first thing you want to do, as to getting self help on the voting process. And the other thing, the help with voting on the election day, there's a lot of help available at the voting centers. So the VC staff would be there. They would be most probably in uniform, maroon or purple, if I don't remember the color correctly, or they would have a logo on their uniform, so would be clearly identifiable, and you can walk up to them and ask for help. And the other thing is that if you're not comfortable, you can always bring your family member or a friend with you who can help you fill the ballot paper. Just agree that they should be filling the ballot paper according to you and not according to them. That's another thing. And as somebody asked on the chat as well, so if you make a mistake on the ballot paper, or the ballot paper does get torn as well, so there isn't a need to worry. You can always ask for help and get a new ballot paper. So that's another help that's available on the voting center. And I would like Kanu to add to the voting help that's available. There's a lot of help to go through.
Yeah, and I think Salih, I saw some question from Salih that these questions are these instructions are on the ballot paper. Yes, there are on the ballot paper. There are in English. So as you can tell, they're in English. But the good thing is when you go to vote, there's like a box. Your screen jaisa hota hai. You walk in, there's a box, and you can go in there. Or wahan 20 languages mein instructions. This is instructions in 20 different languages. I think there's Punjabi, there's Hindi, there's a few more. I think few more languages with instructions on there. So if you would like help, you can read those instructions as well. But I think as Harsimran has covered, the good thing about the Australian democracy is you can get help. So I know when it was my first time, I took my parents to vote. My mom and my dad, I took them to vote, and that's completely okay. I can go with them. I can help them out. I can be next to them. I can help them out to vote. Perfectly fine. So if you're going for the first time, or if you're going with your older parent or someone young, you can go together. You can go as a family. It's perfectly okay. You don't have to go by yourself. But to get more help, you can always, a lot of our centers, they're accessible, whether you have a wheelchair or you have hearing loops. All of our centers are equipped to deal with that. And you can, if you want to get more specific, you can go on our website and find out which centers have access to certain wheelchairs or other means like that. There's also translated voting screens and also Braille voting papers available. So if you would like Braille, where you can feel and touch the ballot paper, we also have that option. And also on the day you go and you feel like, oh, this is too small, I can't read, we can give you a magnifying glass to have a look, or a bigger pencil, because you get pencils like this, but we can give you a bigger pencil to make sure you can hold properly as well. And the cool thing is, Harsimran will be featuring in some of these videos. We'll be creating 23 resources in 23 different languages, which includes Punjabi and a few other big languages, which will have how to enroll, how to vote, and what happens if you don't vote. All of that covered in a video. So there'll be more help available nearing the election time. And the cool thing is, obviously we do our job, but a lot of the other people, big parties, they usually create resources in language, and so you don't feel like you have to get it correct, or you have to get it bang on, because it's always going to be plenty of help. And I think the important thing I think you covered there was around that you don't get a fine for voting. I think you heard something you covered. So I would like to ask, when do you get a fine for voting? Would you happen to know? I know I'm putting you in the spot, but would you happen to know when you get a fine for voting?
So you only get a fine for voting when you do not vote in the election, and you're not able to, supply as a reason as to, why you weren't able to vote. Otherwise, you don't get a fine for voting, and definitely don't get a fine for making mistakes on the ballot paper.
Yeah, 100%. And so that covers. Yeah, sorry, you can go.
Yes, I was saying, do you want me to cover the voting help that's available if you would not be in Victoria?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So if you are going overseas or you're going for a trip, I know in that November time, that is a very big festive period for a lot of us. And we do go overseas, and I know I haven't been back to India in 5 years. And I'm going back in December. So I'm very, very excited. But let's say you are going in November. What happens then? What if you miss the election day?
Yeah, so if you're not here in Victoria, so specifically we'll cover overseas first. So if you're overseas while the election's happening and you're not able to vote in the election, so you could in person vote at select Australian embassies. So you might just need to check with the nearest Australian embassy at your place. So that's one option. And the other thing is, if you're not in Victoria, if you're interstate somewhere else in Australia, so you could vote at any of the Electoral Commission head offices as well. So that's another option when you would not be in Victoria. And then there's another help also if you're in Victoria but not available on the election day. So as we previously covered, there's always early voting option that's available. Early voting would start 14th of November, runs till 25th of November, and all of the early voting center information is or would also be available on the VC website starting 2nd of November. So you'll need to go through them. Yeah.
Mm, perfect. Thank
Anything,
you.
anything else, Kanu, on this one?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on because I know a lot of us could be watching could not be maybe might not be citizens, or what's the care factor? Why should we care about this election coming up? And I think
Yeah.
I think the one thing, obviously we talked about lots of job opportunities. It's always good opportunities. I know when I first starting off, I was very young, and I liked learning, and I liked getting involved, and obviously getting rewarded for my time. Getting money was also good. So that's always a good opportunity. And I know when you put VC on a resume, the Victorian Electoral Commission, it looks very good, because obviously you've been part of democracy, you've helped out, and you can do that even without being a citizen, which I think is pretty cool. And maybe Hasim, do you have any other reasons why, if you're not a citizen and maybe you're a PR or you're newly arrived, why should you care about the election coming up in November?
So you mean if I'm not a citizen?
Yep. If
And
you're let's say you're not a citizen, why should you care for the election coming up?
it could be very personal for everybody, but the reason I would say is, it makes you feel connected to the place you call home, and it makes you, go through all of the process, the political process if you are so interested in it, and uh, probably on a personal level, it also makes you realize, the differences where you grew up in and the place that you call home now, and then. It's I would say it's a personal choice also to be more involved in the process as well, and obviously there's a lot of learning once you get into the process. There are a lot of skills that you take up in the job opportunities that are available, so you could always explore those as well.
And I liked how you covered the personal side, and growing coming here at a young age, I luckily I didn't see too much of how voting or life was like in India, but I know, I guess, living here, you might be new and you're like, oh, I don't know how things work, and I think elections a good way to one, find out how the country thinks. You get a really good perspective on issues that are being talked about, things that are being discussed, and that is a great way if you are a citizen and you're voting. That is a great way to figure out who would you like to vote for. Some of the biggest ways you'll notice in the news, or you'll notice in pamphlets and flyers and posters, that some of the big topics are talked about are this. And what's your views on that? And that's how you can normally find out who to vote for, because this well, so many people. How do you know who to vote for? And one of the best ways is to watch the news. I think a lot of us go on social media, including like Facebook, WhatsApp, and that's how you can find out who you want to vote for. That's how I find out. I might ask you. Yep, Harsimran.
So in between your talk, I think I learned, for example, when I started learning about the electoral process or the democratic process. The one difference that I noticed and I really felt good about was, how accessible it is for anybody, any citizen to just go in and find information, and how easy it is for anybody who's willing to actually run for elections as well. It's so easy for them to go and find and register themselves to stand in the election. So that was a learning which really got me into learning more and more about the democratic process as well. So
And I think you covered a very good point there, where in Victoria and Australia, it's very easy to be a candidate. It's not very ridiculously hard. So if you are thinking, nominations are open. So I think they're still open. Don't quote me on that. But if you would like, you can sign up and become a candidate. So your name can be here. You can represent your community. I know last time around, I live in the Wyndham area. There was lots of people from the South Asian community that that stood up and wanted to have their say. And that's, I think, that's the whole essence of democracy, is where you want people from all these different pockets. And as we know, Australia is very, very multicultural, and we want to make sure that, that when decisions are made, when Parliament is made, that it's reflective of everyone's needs. And I think if you're wanting to be a candidate, this could be the perfect opportunity to do so. But I don't think we have anything to cover. But if there's any questions in the chat, I think there's been some great questions from Danielle and Saliha around elections and anything like that. But if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat. But I think we've covered pretty much a lot of the things that we wanted to cover, especially around finding information. And by the time that the November comes around, there'll be you'll see lots of news, lots of things flying around everywhere.
Pamphlets, promotions, yeah. So maybe Saleh there's a question, yeah.
If you stand for elections, is there a cutoff and do you need a specific number of people to support you? Would you happen to have any idea, Harsimran?
Yes, so there is a specific date on which the nominations close. I wouldn't quote the date, so it's on the VC website when the nominations for the elections would close. And no, you don't need to show that these number of people support you in the election. So you can definitely go on and register as a candidate, but you wouldn't need to show how many people support you. That's for you to decide, and that's your campaign. Totally.
I think just to quote you on that, I think the cutoff date, the nominations date, we can put your name for this is the 2nd of November. So you still have a bit of time, a few months, and I think the minimum, I'm not currently exactly sure, but for the lower house, it's 6 people, or you just need people to nominate you to stand up. And there is a nominal fee. I think it's a couple $100 where.
Okay, so that question I got. So yeah, I was saying, the community, the support that they would want to show. No, yeah, you're correct.
And there is a very minimal fee. I think it's around a couple of $100. But the good thing is, I think if you get more than a percentage of the votes, you actually get that money back. So you only lose money if you don't get a lot of support or a lot of votes. But if you get a certain amount of votes, you do get the feedback. But it's not a big amount. It's a couple of $100. But yeah, great question. And I think the more people that stand up for elections, the better it is. Yes. But perfect. We might wait if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up, I think.
Yeah. So, Kano, if we don't have any questions in between, do you want to make a point about if you're away and you can keep a travel ticket?
Oh, yes. That's a very good point. I know, sorry, I forgot to cover that. But if you are traveling, and let's say you go to India or you go to a different country, you want to make sure you keep the ticket, whether that's a plane ticket, that's a train ticket, whatever it is, you want to keep it. Because if you don't vote, what happens is we'll send you a letter at home saying, why did you not vote? And it's not a fine. Don't worry, it is not a fine. You might be scared saying, oh, no, I forgot to vote. Don't worry, it is not a fine. We're asking you, why didn't you vote? And if you have a good, legitimate reason, a reasonable reason saying, I was overseas, or something emergent, a family emergency come up, or something like that, or whatever the reason is, if you let us know, and then we can make sure you don't get a fine. And it's good to keep the ticket, because if you're overseas, you can just say, hey, I was overseas, it was too hard for me to get to an embassy, and we'll let you off. So don't worry, you don't have to vote if you travel overseas. But if you live in Victoria and you're living in this country, you have to vote. Otherwise, you get a letter saying, why didn't you vote? And if your reason is not good enough or it's not reasonable, you do get a fine for that. But it's not. Yeah, that's a great question. Perfect. And also, while we're here, I might talk a little bit about the Democracy Ambassador Program. So if you are watching this and you're like, oh, I would love to know more information, or I'd love to have this in person. And so my job and Harsimran's job is we actually go out to community and we teach people how to vote. So if you have a mothers group, or if you have a community, a local community that gathers from minimum about more than 5 people, you can go on our website and I'll post a link, or you can book in a session where people like Harsimran, I think we have about 70 democracy ambassadors, and they speak different languages from all across the world. So, for example, Harsimran speaks Punjabi, I speak Gujarati. We have people from all different across the world that speak a variety of languages. And the cool thing is, if the language that you're wanting is not there, we can also provide interpreters completely for free. So the sessions are free. We would come to where you are, what time you meet. We'll bring our resources. We'll teach you all about the elections, and we'll give you all these to do an election as well, so you can practice how to vote in person. So if you're a community leader and you're wanting to do a session, I'll post a link now, but feel free to book in a session. And people like Harsimran will be there who has been trained to deliver sessions like today to teach you more about the election system. Perfect. I might post that in the chat. Perfect. There you go. Perfect. Otherwise, if anyone has any comments, otherwise I might ask for any comments from you, Harsimran, before we wrap up today.
I think it was good chatting with you, Kanu, and I hope this goes across to the community, starts the conversations around being actively involved in the democratic process, because I do feel people. There's a reluctance to really get involved in the democratic process, because there are a lot of reasons, because I think we as migrants come from different places, and we feel it's the same here. So maybe these conversations go out to the community and start new conversations about being more involved, whether you want to stand up for the elections or whether you just want to be very actively involved in the voting process and exercising the right to vote very carefully, not just by asking somebody but by doing your own research as well.
I think 100%. That's a great point that you made around, a lot of times when we come here, we like Australia is such a good country. We don't have to worry about anything, and coming as migrants or refugees, voting in a lot of that time, that it's all bottom of our priority, because we're trying to find work, we're trying to make money, we're trying to get a house, we're trying to do all these other big things, trying to get visas. All those are big priorities that sometimes voting elections come at the bottom. But if you are a community leader, that is where we would love for you to step up and making sure that if you're a community leader and you're established, you're well, you can go and help other people who might be newly arriving or newly becoming citizens to get involved as well, because it's very important that as the country develops, as the rules and laws get made, that multicultural voices and your community's voices being implemented in that. But I think that is it from me and Harsimran. Thank you so much for joining me, Harsimran. This is actually one of our first sessions on online sessions. So Anthony, she did an amazing job, and I'm sure as she does more sessions in person and online, she'll get even more and more better and bang on. But that is it from myself. If you have any questions, feel free to go on the website. You can get all these resources with an interpreter. But I would like to say a massive thank you to Salehan and Chai Chat community for joining us today, and all of you for having us today. So yeah, that wraps it up. Thank you so much.